So hi everyone, I'm here with our Educo trainer Raz, who teaches on the CMC Essentials course for us. And today we are going to be talking about some of the main CMC challenges that small biotech startups face when they get going with CMC. So welcome Raz. And my first question then is, so what are some of the main challenges, CMC challenges that small biotech startups have, and what are they facing?
Okay, so there are many challenges. Okay, it's for a reason we call this that we walk the funnel of death, and basically that's the high risk reality that many biotech startups simply don't make it through because of the many risks that they face. This field is very highly regulated. We're dealing with people's lives, literally, and we're dealing with people's health. So developing new drugs is a very high risk endeavor, both for the patients and for business. A business entity that does this is in a high risk endeavor. And I think that if we want to sort of crystallize a few, let's say, key challenges, one of the things that I find most is that deciding on the right thing to do is a really critical aspect. So we need to balance between compliance, as I mentioned, the regulatory compliance and the safety of the patients. So those would be the must-haves with some real-life constraints. So the budget is usually very limited. Okay, these companies are raising funds from round to round. They don't have any income usually. And everything that they do is very, very expensive. The timelines are very slow. So combine expensive and slow, investors don't like it, okay? So it's a high risk investment. And on the other hand, it's really hard not to overkill with your development efforts. So doing one study too many could actually deplete your budget to a degree that is really a risk from a business perspective. So the balance of doing the right thing at the right time is really something that startups challenge with. Now, add on that usually startups are very small teams. So I find sometimes companies as small as two scientists and a CEO, and they rely heavily on external resources. So those would be contract manufacturing organizations or CROs or consultants. Either way, there is a lack of the big picture many times. So each one of those service providers would see the situation from their perspective. They might have a conflicting position even, like the risk appetite. Okay, my CMO wouldn't care too much about well, they would, of course, but their main intention is to make this batch successful. And they don't see the big picture of me having to balance between the clinical budget and the CMC budget and my salaries and everything else. So really there is a conflict between the different perspectives, and those companies, as I mentioned, are sometimes almost virtual. So it's really hard to find the sweet spot between all those moving parts. And on the other hand, not doing something or correcting things later on in the program, the more we advance in the clinical development, could also cost a fortune and sometimes be too high of a regulatory risk that companies are basically stuck with past decisions, and investors don't like it either. So as no matter how you look at it, from day one of the project and all the way through the market, there are risks that loom everywhere. And as I said, they're usually around finding the right balance between the development activities that we do and balancing the budget and all the real life constraints. Yeah, so that's why we call it the funnel of death, because basically, if you look at the number of companies that go out on the drug development journey, we start with 1,000 candidates, and it gradually decreases over time. So it's not only the challenge of finding a safe and effective drug, it's also all the other challenges. So we need to prove that it's safe and effective. It costs a lot of money. It takes a lot of time. We need to make this drug in sufficient amounts for the clinical trials. So We need to find the right manufacturing process. So all these things really can not work, basically. Now, another challenge would be material supply. So, at the beginning, especially, when it's still just science, let's imagine, a candidate molecule that has zero knowledge in clinical development. Everyone is really focused on the clinical aspects. Okay, what it would do to the patients. When you look at presentations, you see really promising data from cell cultures, even from animal models, and the material supply at those stages is really less interesting, so to speak. So, even at later stages, also for clinical programs, usually the mindset is that we'll figure out the material supply. Let's first see if this compound actually works. So, you would have one or two slides on we're going to make this drug this way or another, and everyone moves on to discussing the clinical aspects. Now, this makes sense, of course, because the target is to help the patients and to ameliorate some disease, but sometimes CMC is a very big challenge. So it's not only to prove that the drug is safe and effective, we also need to deliver it, and we have to deliver it in a consistent quality over time in a commercial process. And these things are not to be taken for granted. There are some programs that simply don't find a way, especially with the more advanced therapies. So to make cell and gene therapy at large scale, at consistent quality, sometimes is a big of a challenge, just as the clinical aspect. So one more thing about clinical supply is that many times, again, from my perspective, working with small companies, usually they work on very rare disease and orphan designations. So they get a lot of leeway from the regulatory authorities in expedited programs that basically tell them, listen, run as quickly as you can through clinical development and go out to market, even at high risk. We'll get more and more data on the clinical aspects when we're out there, but this puts CMC development as the rate limiting step for those programs. Okay, so it could be a rate limiting step to the next clinical trials, simply because there is no material yet ready, and we must find the CMO or develop a quick manufacturing process, and it's a rate limiting step. And to market. Okay, so yeah, we finished all the safety and efficacy data collection that we need. We convinced the authorities that this is working, but we still don't have a viable process to support market supply. And this is definitely one of the considerations the regulatory authority has when approving your portfolio. So material supply is always a challenge to balance. Maybe to one last bit, to keep it as a 3 bullets kind of a format, we have an issue of knowledge, of outsourced knowledge. Basically, as I mentioned, some companies are literally virtual. So knowledge retention within this virtual framework called a startup company can become very difficult in those situations. So it's difficult to retain knowledge when everything is outsourced, basically. So your CMO is doing one thing, your consultants are doing another thing, and not everything flows back into the company. We usually rely on very few highly professional, highly trained, overworked employees or consultants. So there is a real difficulty in onboarding junior people to positions, especially in small startups where each one of the team members does so many things. We can't just hire a fresh university graduate because they still lack the perspective. So we really rely on a very small amount of experts. And as I said, getting this knowledge to remain in-house and not fall apart when someone leaves, for example, or to get stuck in someone's head, like in knowledge silos, is a really big challenge.
Brilliant. Thank you for that long in-depth answer. It's very clear that Yeah, it's a difficult process, CMC, and it's, a lot of people would, yeah, it's a lot of. I can see why startups struggle. It is a hard, complex process.
Yeah, and it's
So
not
then,
only CMC, the clinical development
yeah,
has
yeah,
its
exactly,
merit,
yeah.
but I'm a CMC expert, so I know these pains very well.
The whole process is challenging. But
Yeah.
I suppose my next question then, Raz, is what you've listed some really interesting complex challenges there that biotechs face. What would be your potential solutions to um overcome those challenges?
Yeah.
What can these startups be doing to help them overcome those challenges?
Yeah, so I think that first and foremost we need to remember that we are in the knowledge business. Okay, so if you look at the core aspect of this, we're collecting knowledge. So first, we have some disease. We don't know what would cure this disease, and we find a molecule. Now, we have zero knowledge on this molecule. We don't know if it's safe. We don't know if it's effective. We don't know how to make it. So we start with a zero knowledge game, and then we basically everything that we do is collecting more and more knowledge by investing money in studies, by running development work in manufacturing, and we're basically collecting more knowledge, so from zero to product, so to speak. So if we treat this knowledge as an asset, I even learned I learned a new accounting word lately, amortization. So it's basically treating those intangible knowledge assets over years in the way we report our budgets. But basically, what we need to do is to treat this knowledge as an asset, and that that um, that focuses on us on mapping all the areas where we create knowledge in our endeavors. So, as I mentioned, if we do a development study, okay, there are many things that we learn. Sometimes companies, they run so quickly that they just finish the study, they file the report somewhere in a non-accessible PDF file that only that specific person that was involved in that specific project knows about. And in that development study, yeah, maybe there was some conclusion that later on would be crystallized into our activities. Okay, so if it's a process development study, we would have the manufacturing process. But we must remember that we learned many things over the course of that specific study, and companies find ways to sort of crystallize this knowledge in an accessible way. So development studies, all the outsourced activities that are done. Okay, so our CMO is learning a lot of things over the course of working on our project. Okay, so their teams know sometimes our product even better than us, the sponsors. Our consultants, okay, so if I ask my consultant to research some topic, I might be getting their answer and deciding what to do with this answer quickly, but then where is all the research that they've done? Am I keeping this? Am I keeping all this knowledge? Am I not losing it? Because consultants come and go, and CMOs come and go, and things are very dynamic. So we must always think, even if we're a virtual company, we must always think, how do we capture as much of this as possible for future generations? Okay, this is a bit macabre, but I always say, treat your work as if tomorrow morning you're off to, okay, let's do it nicely. You're off to a 1 year holiday, and no one can reach you, then that's the
We
mindset
we
that you
say
should work
we
with.
say in the UK, imagine if you got hit by a bus tomorrow.
Yeah, that's
Is
that's
that
what I
what you
wanted to
that's what you
say.
were trying to avoid?
I was trying to remain.
Don't worry, that's fine.
Yeah, okay. So that's exactly what I had in mind. Yeah, but this is unfortunate. And, people come and go on much less dramatic occasions for a simple, people switch jobs, as simple as that. And sometimes you have companies that are, this one superhero CMC development expert that has been doing everything in the company for the past 5 years. And yeah, if they leave, even in good terms, there is so much you can ask them. There is so much they will be involved. They will move on to their next position. They're going to have to make you a favor if you stumble upon something. So you really need to think constantly during the day-to-day activities, where is this new knowledge that we gain today is kept, basically. Clarity in these projects equals money, as simple as that. So when we have little knowledge, it's a risk. Okay, as I said at the beginning, the program is very high risk because we have no idea if this molecule, it could be completely toxic. Okay, and we would see it in very early on animal studies. So we have zero knowledge. This knowledge is translated to risks. Investors know this very well. Okay, so if they don't have clarity, if they come to a project and it's all over the place and they ask a question and we need to go hunt for that person that left half a year ago, then it's a risk. They perceive it as a risk, and they might be not happy with this and decide even not to invest in a company that doesn't have a clear, solid foundation of knowledge. This also translates to costs in the normal operation. So if I onboard a new hire or even onboard a new consultant, the amount of time that I would need to spend with them, if my knowledge is all over the place and it's siloed and it's inaccessible, is something that would simply translate to hours, to work hours that need to be invested to collect this. And not to speak of regulatory submissions and other milestones that the tech transfers. All those milestones are heavily burdened with siloed knowledge and unclear development data, and it's a really good practice to crystallize this knowledge. So maybe if we want to speak a little bit more hands-on, so to speak, for me again, going back to the CMC realms, I use module 3 of the CTD as a really important framework for CMC knowledge management. Okay, so we will talk about this in module 1 of the full course. So basically, what we do in module 1 is give sort of a table of contents of module 3. And the reason why I chose this format is because module 3 is really telling the full story of CMC. So if you understand module 3 of a project, you understand their CMC. And if we have it as a map, as on an ongoing basis, if we always hold this CTD module 3 map in our hand, we can really see very clearly what are the different moving parts that we're working on. Sometimes it's very hard to remember the big picture, and we can also identify the gaps in the program very well. So by having a solid view, and again, module 3, the actual guideline is being revised now, so it doesn't contain all the aspects of it, especially of today's modern products, but still, it's a very solid framework to maintain this knowledge. Okay, so companies choose different tools. I'll touch upon tools in a second, but just to finish the thought, basically knowledge management and a good knowledge management practice is one of the key enablers of quality risk management. That's the premise of ICHQ10. So ICHQ10 basically tells us, listen, if you manage your knowledge carefully, you can apply the principles of quality risk management more efficiently. That's a very important point to remember when we do our daily work. And as I said, having a solid framework that was given to us, basically, the CTD module 3 is very helpful. So yeah, so if we want to basically look at some, practical tools, so obviously we're all riding this big wave of digital transformation now, okay, and knowledge management in the age of AI, of large language models. Everything that we do in pharma is you can boil it down to a lot of language. Okay, so all the regulatory submissions, all those development reports, all those SOPs, the batch records, everything is written in text. Okay, so text is definitely something that we sort of cracked now with the advent of large language models and ChatGPT and the like. So we really have tools today to collect a lot of this data, but not only. Okay, so we have other kinds of data that we generate in drug development that are also we must put them into digital platforms. Okay, so um, take stability data, for example. Okay, if I hold all my stability data in scanned PDFs, which is a reality for many projects because we work in a document-centric world. Okay, so if I had my contract lab doing a stability time point for me, they would have to sign it. Their QA would have to sign it, and they would have to send to me the approved version. But this basically makes my data inaccessible. So I have to transcribe that PDF back into an Excel, or if I'm lucky enough, they're willing to share the Excel with me. But this really creates a lot of friction and really prevents us from harnessing the full potential of our data and and in fact not benefit from all the knowledge that we gained in those studies. So using digital tools on a daily basis is a really important habit, even if the immediate ROI is not evident. So, we have, and we already have existing systems. Okay, so for virtual companies, usually they rely a lot of their vendors. So, for example, the CMO would probably, hopefully, have a quality management system. Many would use an electronic quality management system. So we can sort of piggyback on their systems, and use their platforms to do our own knowledge management and treat those as opportunities. And we have many other tools. Tools like Firefly's AI, for example, summarizes meetings. Okay, so you have a 3 hours long risk assessment meeting with 15 different consultants from all around the world. This meeting costs a fortune to run, okay, because everyone is paid by the hour. There is some poor junior somewhere writing notes for this meeting. Okay, it takes them time. They might make mistakes. So having an AI listen to this talk, of course, putting a disclaimer here on data safety and the company policies, and don't do this without consulting with your lawyer kind of disclaimer, but really harnessing those tools to crystallize the knowledge that we're gaining in those meetings, in those interactions, is is a must to play with, because today it's an anecdote and we're all smiling and we're scared about our jobs in the future, but in the very near future this will become the standard. Just like you would not mail anyone a snail mail today because you don't even know their address. um, People would look back at the times that their knowledge was not digital and say, how could we do this? I mean, we lost so much data in the process, so much knowledge that it's really so. Yeah, I can mention other tools like a Mind Manager for knowledge management. QBD Vision is building tools specifically for CMC knowledge management, and more and more. I think just to summarize the bottom line, that this is really a multidisciplinary effort. Okay, so many of us are engineers and scientists. We're not data people per se. We're not IT people. So I think that this is something that needs to come from the management, that they would allocate a specific team and resources to be in charge of digital transformation. It can start small. Okay, it can be very specific use cases. Okay, take stability data as homework. Okay, capture all the stability data of your company in one database. Okay, I'm saying database. It could be an Excel, but this is not really a database. Okay, data people will explain to you what a proper database is, but in practice, this is something that can be done and should be done. And I'm sure that many companies are doing it today. and and with the food comes the appetite. So I really think that small digital transformations on specific pain points could really start a snowball rolling here and leverage the company's efforts. And this would later translate to all the things that we mentioned before, that the knowledge becomes accessible and transparent, and investors would like it, and then the company would succeed better. And it's hard to measure the ROI immediately, but this is sort of the big picture.
So thank you for that, Raz. So could you tell me a little bit more about the course that you're leading for Educo Life Sciences, the CMC Essentials course?
The CMC Essentials training course is basically intended as a wide scope overview of CMC. So the intention is not to make you an expert on each specific topic, because CMC is really, wherever you look, there is a rabbit hole that you can go down to, and you would find experts in that specific domain. Take filter validation. We can do an entire course about filter validation, and there are a lot of nuances. But what I found very critical, especially for positions like quality assurance and project managers and even the higher management of the company, to sort of have a big picture understanding of CMC as a whole, how all the moving parts are connected. So how the properties of the product interact with the manufacturing process, and how the control strategy is interacting with the properties of the product and with the manufacturing process, and how we design quality and quality by design. All these things really require a very wide scope understanding. And what happens many times, again, especially at the earlier years, so I'm looking at the first 5 years of someone's career, they would usually start in a very specific niche in the industry. So they would join a manufacturing team or a QC lab, or even a regulatory team as technical writers, but they would get very specific assignments, okay? But as soon as they step into their second, third positions, where they already work in interdisciplinary teams, okay, when the project manager needs to discuss with the QC people and the quality people and manufacturing people and the clients and the sponsor, I need to understand how that clinical development nuances that they're telling them in the call really connect with the realities of CMC development. I think that having I basically built this course for myself 10 years ago. When I started my way 12 years ago, time is running. So when I started my career, I really was hoping that someone would just, you know, stop everything for a second, just show me around everything, and tell me what's going on. And then, send me off to those specific tasks that I was given. I think that having a clear big picture in mind really helps in making the right decisions, in doing proper risk management, and yeah, and it helps the overall efficiency of the team. Aside from the holistic view that this course gives, it really points people in the direction of what else they need to go deeper in. So sometimes, knowledge is abundant. So look up almost anything online and you would find endless resources. There are many regulatory guidelines that really outline everything that you need to know on a subject, at least on the regulatory level. So sometimes the challenge is really to know what to look for. Okay, so again, having a wide scope overview gives you also those the acquaintance with the different topics that exist, so that you know what you don't know, basically. And then it would send you off either to other courses that we would offer later on, or to deeper courses that are offered in the Educo Life Science library, or again in other online resources. Knowledge is abundant, but sometimes it's hard to connect the dots. So that's another intention in giving a wide scope overview of CMC development.
Thank you very much for your time today, and I hope
Okay,
everyone's
with
enjoyed
pleasure.
this. Yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed this interview. Yeah, thank you, Raz. Thank you very much. And
Okay,
yeah, see
thank
you
you,
again soon,
Alex.
everyone.
Yes, hope to see you all.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.